Richard hadn't planned on buying the house on Breakwater Bay. In fact, he hadn't planned on much of anything since Julia died. Planning required hope, and hope had become a stranger to him over the past 18 months. But Haley needed stability. His 9-year-old daughter needed walls that didn't remind her of the hospital visits, the whispered conversations, the morning her mother didn't wake up. She needed a place where grief wasn't painted into every corner, where memories didn't ambush her at the breakfast table. So when Richard's sister showed him the listing for the old Victorian on Breakwater Bay, he'd stared at the peeling paint and sagging porch and thought perfect. A project, something to fill the endless echoing hours after Haley went to bed, when the silence became unbearable. The house was a disaster. The inspection report read like a tragedy in 3 acts. The realtor had actually apologized while handing over the keys, but Richard had learned something about tragedy. Sometimes you survive it by choosing a different one, something with nails and wood and problems you could actually fix. They moved in on a Saturday in late September. Haley had been quiet during the drive, clutching the stuffed rabbit Julia had given her on her 6th birthday. Richard watched her in the rearview mirror. This small person who looked so much like her mother it sometimes hurt to breathe, and wondered if he was making another mistake in a long line of them. "It's big," Haley said when they pulled up. Not excited, not disappointed, just observing. "It is," Richard agreed. "Lots of room for us to figure things out." She nodded, still holding the rabbit. The first few weeks were chaos. Richard took a leave from his job as a structural engineer to focus on the renovations. He started with the essentials: plumbing, electrical, the roof that leaked like a sieve. Haley helped where she could, handing him tools, holding the flashlight steady while he worked in cramped spaces. She didn't talk much, hadn't since Julia died. Her teacher said she was doing fine academically, participating when called on, but the spark was gone. The girl who used to narrate her entire day in breathless run-on sentences now moved through the world like she was afraid of taking up too much space. Richard understood. He felt the same way. It was a Thursday afternoon in late October when Haley found it. Richard was in the kitchen, swearing at a cabinet that refused to hang straight, when he heard her call from upstairs. "Dad, there's something weird in my closet." He climbed the stairs, still holding the level. Haley's room was the smallest bedroom, but it had a window seat that looked out over the bay, and she'd chosen it immediately. The closet was a narrow walk-in, deeper than it looked, with built-in shelves that were probably original to the house. Haley was standing inside, one hand pressed against the back wall. "Listen," she said. Richard tapped the wall. Hollow. Different from the solid thunk of plaster over lath in the rest of the room. "Hidden compartment." Haley's eyes had a flicker of something he hadn't seen in months: curiosity. "Let's find out." It took him 20 minutes to locate the catch, a small wooden knob hidden in the decorative molding near the floor. When he pulled it, a section of the wall swung inward on silent hinges. Behind it was a space about 3 feet wide and 2 feet deep, and inside that space was a child's backpack. It was blue with yellow stars, faded and dusty but otherwise pristine. The kind of backpack a kindergartner might carry. Richard pulled it out carefully, aware of Haley watching with wide eyes. "Should we open it?" she whispered. Richard hesitated. This felt like crossing a threshold, like opening someone's diary. But curiosity won. He unzipped the main compartment. Inside was a child's world, frozen in time. A wooden pencil box with a name written in careful marker: Danny Martinez, age 6 sous. A lunchbox with dinosaurs on it. A folder full of drawings. Houses with triangle roofs, stick-figure families, a dog with improbable proportions. A library book about stars, 3 months overdue according to the date stamp. And at the bottom, wrapped in a plastic bag, a composition notebook with "My Journal" written on the cover in a child's uncertain handwriting. Haley reached for the journal, but Richard stopped her. Maybe we should try to find out who Danny Martinez is first, he said quietly. That night, after Haley was asleep, Richard searched. It didn't take long. The internet remembers everything, especially tragedies. Danny Martinez, 6, disappeared from his home on Breakwater Bay on March 15, 1994, last seen playing in his backyard at 412 Breakwater Bay. Despite extensive searches, no trace of the boy was ever found. Parents, Maria and Roberto Martinez, moved away from the area 6 months after their son's disappearance. Case remains open. 412 Breakwater Bay. This house. Richard sat back, the weight of it settling over him. A child had vanished from these walls. A family had been shattered in these rooms. The hidden compartment wasn't playful. It was a time capsule of a life interrupted. He should have slept. Instead, he read the journal. Danny's entries were short, the way a 6-year-old's would be. Observations about his day, complaints about broccoli, excitement about a loose tooth. But threaded through it all was a name. Mr. Caldwell next door. Mr. Caldwell showed me his telescope today. We looked at the moon. He said I could be an astronaut. Mr. Caldwell gave me cookies. Don't tell Mom. Mr. Caldwell said I'm his special friend. He said we have secrets. Richard felt sick. The entries grew more troubling. Mr. Caldwell said if I tell, no one will believe me. He said my parents will be mad. The final entry was dated March 14, 1994, one day before Danny disappeared. I'm going to tell tomorrow. I don't care if Mr. Caldwell gets mad. Mum says secrets that make you feel bad aren't good secrets. Richard closed the journal. His hands were shaking. This wasn't his story to tell, but it wasn't a story that could stay buried either. The next morning, he called the police. Detective Sarah Chen arrived that afternoon. She was in her late 40s, with kind eyes and the careful manner of someone who'd spent decades delivering bad news. She photographed everything, bagged the backpack and its contents, and listened as Richard explained how they'd found it. The Martinezes, she said finally. I remember the case. I was just starting back then. It destroyed that family. What about Caldwell? Richard asked. The neighbor Danny mentioned in his journal. Detective Chen's expression darkened. Robert Caldwell. He was questioned extensively. Nothing ever stuck. No evidence, no body. He sold the house next door about a year after Danny disappeared. Died in 2008. So he got away with it. We don't know that he did anything, Chen said, but her voice said otherwise. What we know is a little boy disappeared, and now we know he was afraid. That's more than we knew yesterday. She paused at the door. The Martinezes deserve to know about this. They deserve to know their son tried to be brave, that he was going to tell. I'll contact them. After she left, Richard found Haley sitting on the porch steps. Is Danny dead? She asked without looking at him. Richard sat down beside her. He'd learned not to lie to Haley about hard things. Lies, even kind ones, had a way of growing into worse problems. Probably, he said. He disappeared a long time ago. Because of the neighbor man. We don't know for sure, but yeah, probably. Haley was quiet for a long time. And then, Mom used to say that bad things happen sometimes, and we can't change them, but we can choose what we do after. Richard's throat tightened. Julia had said that. During her last weeks, when the treatment had stopped working, and they'd had to tell Haley the truth. She did say that, he managed. So what do we do after finding Danny's backpack? It was a good question. Maybe the only question. 3 days later, Detective Chen called. The Martinezes want to meet you, if you're willing. Richard wasn't sure he was willing, wasn't sure he could bear the weight of their grief on top of his own. But Haley asked to come, and that decided it. They met at a cafe downtown. Maria and Roberto Martinez were in their 60s now, grey-haired and worn by decades of not knowing. They brought their daughter Isabella, who would have been Danny's little sister. She was probably in her early 30s now. Maria wept when she saw the backpack. She held it like it was made of glass, like it might disappear if she gripped too hard. "We never stopped looking," Roberto said. His English was accented, careful. "Every day for 30 years we wondered. Where did he go? Was he afraid? Did he call for us?" "The journal," Maria said. "Detective Chen told us. He was going to tell. Our brave boy was going to tell." Richard didn't know what to say. "I'm sorry" felt grotesquely inadequate. But Haley spoke. "He liked stars," she said quietly. "In his journal. And he drew pictures. He drew your family. He put a lot of hearts around them." Maria reached across the table and took Haley's hand. "Thank you, Pequeña. Thank you for finding him, for bringing him back to us." "We didn't bring him back," Haley said, and Richard heard the grief in her voice, the understanding that some people don't come back, no matter how much you want them to. "But maybe we brought part of him back." Isabella pulled out her phone. "I want to show you something." She scrolled through photos and turned the screen around. "This is the astronomy center we built. In Danny's name. We raised money for it, got it finished 2 years ago. Kids can come learn about stars, use the telescopes, all free." The building was beautiful, all glass and modern angles, with Danny's smiling face on a plaque by the entrance. "He wanted to be an astronaut," Isabella said. "That monster used that dream to hurt him, so we took the dream back. We made it into something good." Richard stared at the photo. Something was shifting in his chest, some calcified lump of pain beginning to crack. "After Danny was taken from us," Roberto said, "we had a choice, to let it destroy us or to let it change us. Some days, I'm not sure we chose right. The grief, it never leaves." "But the astronomy center," Maria added. "It helps. Knowing Danny's love of stars is teaching other children that his name means something beautiful now, not just something tragic." They talked for 2 hours, about Danny, about Julia, about the strange mathematics of loss. How you never get back what you lost, but sometimes you find something else in the empty space, not a replacement, just a different kind of light. As they were leaving, Isabella hugged Haley. "You're brave," she said, "opening that closet, bringing this to us. That took courage." In the car, Haley was quiet for a long time. "Then Dad, are we going to be okay?" Richard thought about the question, the real question, not about the house or the money or the logistics of single parenthood, but about the wound they both carried, the Julia-shaped hole in their lives. "I don't know," he said honestly. "I think maybe we'll be different. Maybe we'll find ways to be okay that we can't imagine yet." Like the Martinezes. Like the Martinezes. The house renovation took on new meaning after that. Richard wasn't just fixing walls and floors anymore. He was creating a space where difficult stories could be held without breaking you, where the past could exist alongside the present. He finished Haley's room first, painted it the soft blue she chose, installed proper bookshelves, repaired the window seat. The hidden panels stayed, but they turned it into something different. A memory box, Haley called it. She put a photo of Julia inside, along with a letter she'd written to her mother. "So she can have a secret space too," Haley explained. Richard added something of his own, his wedding ring, which he'd been carrying in his pocket like a talisman. Not because he was moving on, but because he was choosing to remember differently, to let Julia be a presence instead of an absence. Detective Chen called in November. "I thought you'd want to know. We had ground-penetrating radar done on Caldwell's old property. We found remains. Dental records confirm it's Danny." Richard closed his eyes. It was the answer everyone had known was coming, but knowing didn't make it easier. "The Martinezes want to have a funeral," Chen continued. "Proper burial. They asked if you and Haley would come." The funeral was small, Immediate family, a few close friends, Richard and Haley. The priest spoke about stolen innocence and eternal peace. Maria read a poem she'd written 30 years ago and never been able to share because there was no grave to read it at. Afterward, at the reception, Isabella approached Richard. "I have something for Haley," she said. She handed him a small box. Inside was a necklace with a star pendant. "From the Astronomy Center gift shop. I thought, since she likes stars too, since she brought Danny home." Richard felt his eyes burn. "Thank you." "No," Isabella said. "Thank you. You could have just put the backpack in a dumpster, avoided all of this, but you didn't. You gave us closure. You gave Danny peace. That's not a small thing." That night, Richard gave Haley the necklace. She put it on immediately, holding the star between her fingers. "Mom would have liked the Martinezes," she said. "She would have." "Do you think she knows about what we did?" Richard thought about it. He wasn't sure what he believed about death anymore, whether Julia was somewhere watching or simply gone. But he believed in the choices they made in her absence. "I think she knows we're trying," he said. "To be kind, to do the right thing even when it's hard. That's what she would have wanted." Haley nodded. Then, in a voice so quiet he almost missed it, "I'm glad we moved here." It was the first time she'd said anything positive about the house, about anything really, since Julia died. Yeah. I think we needed a project, something to fix that wasn't us." Richard pulled her into a hug. This small person who was wiser than she should have to be, who understood that sometimes healing came from unexpected places. Christmas came. They decorated simply. A small tree, lights in the windows. Maria and Roberto sent a card with a photo of Danny's headstone. Finally marked. Finally home. They were planning a bench at the Astronomy Center with his name on it, a place for people to sit and look at the stars. Richard hung the card on the refrigerator next to Haley's school photos and Julia's recipe cards. This was their life now. Not the life they'd planned, not the life they'd wanted, but a life that held room for both sorrow and hope, for endings and beginnings, for the people they'd lost and the people they were becoming. In January, Haley started talking more at school. Her teacher called with an update, surprise evident in her voice. Haley had volunteered to do a presentation on astronomy, had talked about how her mom used to point out constellations, about a boy named Danny who loved stars, about how beautiful things could come from sad stories. "I don't know what changed," the teacher said, "but she seems lighter." Richard knew. The backpack had changed something, not erased their grief, but shown them how to carry it differently. How to transform it into something that honored the people they'd lost instead of just mourning them. He finished the house in March, almost exactly a year after they'd moved in. The Victorian on Breakwater Bay was no longer a disaster. The walls were straight, the plumbing worked, the roof kept the rain out. But more than that, it felt like a home. Their home. On the anniversary of Danny's disappearance, Richard and Haley visited the Astronomy Center. They sat on the new bench with Danny's name engraved on a brass plate. Isabella was there, showing a group of excited children how to focus the telescope. "Look," Haley said, pointing at the display. "That's Saturn. Danny drew it in his journal." They watched the children peer through the telescope, their faces lighting up with wonder. Some of them, Richard knew, carried their own griefs. Some had parents who were sick, siblings who died, families that had fractured. But here, for an hour, they could be kids looking at planets and dreaming of space. "This is what moving forward looks like," Richard said, more to himself than to Haley. "What do you mean?" "You don't forget the sad things. You don't pretend they didn't happen, but you find ways to make them matter, to turn them into something that helps." Haley leaned against him. "Like fixing houses. Like fixing houses." They stayed until the center closed. On the drive home, Haley said, "Dad, I was thinking, When I grow up, I want to be an engineer like you, but not for buildings, for schools or community centers, places where people can go when things are hard. Richard's chest felt full. That's a beautiful goal. Because of Danny. And because of us, because I know what it's like when everything falls apart, and I think people need places that hold them together. The house on Breakwater Bay stood solid against the ocean wind as they pulled into the driveway. Inside, the rooms held their stories. Julia's recipes in the kitchen drawer, Danny's memory in Haley's closet, the countless hours Richard had spent turning chaos into order. But more than that, the house held the lesson they'd learned through loss and discovery, that healing wasn't about erasing pain, it was about making space for it, about letting it transform you without destroying you, about finding ways to honor the people you'd lost by becoming someone who helped others carry their own impossible weights. That night, Richard stood in the doorway of Haley's room, watching her sleep. The star necklace glinted in the moonlight from the window. On her nightstand sat a framed photo of Julia, smiling at something beyond the camera's edge. And in the closet, behind the hidden panel, their memory box held its vigil, a physical reminder that some doors, once opened, changed everything. He thought about Maria's words at the cafe. "You brought part of him back to us." That was all any of them could do, really. Bring pieces forward, honor what was lost by refusing to let it be meaningless, build something new from the rubble of what had broken. Richard turned off the hallway light and walked downstairs. Tomorrow, he'd start on the porch railing. Next month, maybe the garden. There was always something to fix, always another project waiting. But tonight, the house was quiet and whole, and that was enough. So, wherever you are right now, whether you're watching from your home in California, or lying in bed somewhere in Texas, or taking a break at work in New York, I want to hear from you. Did this story make you feel something? Maybe it reminded you of your own losses, your own unexpected discoveries. Maybe it showed you that healing comes from the strangest places, that sometimes the hardest things we face lead us to exactly where we need to be. What lesson are you taking from Richard and Haley's journey? Was it that grief transforms but doesn't have to destroy? That small acts of courage, like opening a hidden panel or making a phone call, can ripple out in ways we never expect? Or maybe you learned something different, something specific to your own story. Leave a comment below. Tell me where you're watching from and what this story meant to you. Your words might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. And if this story touched you, if Richard and Haley's journey felt real and honest and true, do me a favor. Hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next story. Because there are more houses to explore, more hidden histories to uncover, more single fathers finding their way through grief to something that looks like hope. Sometimes we're all just looking for proof that broken things can be made beautiful again, that closed doors can open, that the weight we carry can become the strength that helps others stand. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And remember, the hardest chapters of our lives often teach us how to write better endings. I'll see you in the next story.